Hello there everyone, it's me Harry, and today is day 10 of the Mediavent calendar. Only 15 more days to go until Christmas Day. So, it's not going to be too long now. It just feels really quick, if I'll be honest with ya. But today, we're going to be taking a look at another video game franchise, Test Drive. And I'll show you all the Test Drive games I have. So, to note, well, there were some games branded under the name, such as V-Rally 2 and Le Mans 24 Hours. I won't be showing them in this video. I'll do those for a standalone, like, infograms video or something, if I do one, that is. So, yeah. Let's get on with it. So, I don't have the first 3 games, because they're all MS-DOS titles. But I do have almost all of them from Off-Road onwards. And here is the original Test Drive Off-Road. It was developed by a British company called Elite Systems and published by Accolade, whilst in Europe it was released by Eidos Interactive. Accolade wasn't a publisher that ever had a European distribution arm, so they always went with other companies. And with this game, they published it through Eidos. So this came out in July of 1997. It was one of the last games that didn't have the little black PlayStation ticker on the bottom, like what later games had. And this game is pretty, bad. It certainly has not aged well at all, even for a PlayStation game. Here's the manual. So it's a big, thick manual in many different languages. And then the disc is shiny, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to say about the disc. Like, the game was likely good at the time, but nowadays, in 2025, as of when I'm recording this, I don't think so. Released in November of 1994 was the first Test Drive installment of the main series to return, and that was Test Drive 4. Released many years after Test Drive 3. And then in this game, rather than it being an open world title, it was more or less like a Need for Speed kind of game, where you're driving different vehicles on a linear track whilst the timer counts down. But I don't know if the timer counts down in the Need for Speed franchise, because I'll be honest with you, I've only played the original Need for Speed on the Sega Saturn, so I wouldn't be able to judge it otherwise. So this was developed by a company called Pitbull Syndicate, and it was their first game. And having a Dodge Viper on the front made it even more prettier. It was meant to be like a challenge between muscle cars and modern cars, hence why there's the Dodge on the front and some other muscle car that I don't even know of. There were 10 cars altogether in the game. It lists Electronic Arts on the back because they distributed the game. This was right when EA bought a stake in Accolade, and then with that they were able to become their international distributor. Aside from Japan, strangely enough, then released in 1998 is Test Drive 5, the sequel to Test Drive 4. And this was also done by Pitbull Syndicate and published by Accolade. And it's once again another war between muscle cars and modern cars, but with more vehicles to choose and more locations as well. Still a game that hasn't aged very well in modern day gaming, but still a fun time regardless. The same could really be said for all of Pitbull Syndicate's titles. They did another title for Accolade called Big Air Snowboarding. I haven't shown it in this video either because, well, this is about Test Drive, not snowboarding. And using the Test Drive 4 engine, an in-team house at Accolade developed Test Drive 4x4, known in North America as Test Drive Off-Road 2. So this is the sequel to the original Test Drive Off-Road, with more vehicles and more other things as well. So here's the back. Yeah, it doesn't explicitly list down Pitbull Syndicate as developer, because as I said, they mostly just assisted with the development. But they still, as I said, assisted with it. And so as such, yeah, they sort of co-developed it, and the in-house team at Accolade did the rest of the game. Yeah, and they also did Demolition Racer. But that was right after what happened next. Yeah, I had to just get something I forgot all about. So sorry about that. And that next game that the in-house team did was 4x4 World Trophy, i.e. Test Drive Off-Road 3. So this was released in 1999 in the States and 2000 in Europe. It was renamed as 4x4 World Trophy in Europe because, well, technically what happened was Accolade was bought out by Infogrames in 1999 and rebranded as Infogrames North America. And while you could deem it as like a full buyout, it sort of technically wasn't. The European arm of Infogrames weren't even allowed to use the Test Drive trademark due to some complicated copyright issues with Infogrames North America, as what Accolade was rebranded as. And so, yeah, they had to rename the title as 4x4 World Trophy. Here's the back. And then here's the manual. So my copy is a 2003 re-release. Copies that have the original artwork on the front are very hard to find. I've not been able to find a single copy of it, only of this version of the game, strangely enough. So, you'd think Test Drive 6 would have a name change in Europe, but what ended up happening instead was Infogrames North America sold the publishing rights to the game to Cryo Interactive, a rival French publisher, and one that I don't think fondly of. So this was released in June of 2000 in Europe, but was released in October of 1999 in the States. It had a Dreamcast port as well, which never came out in the UK. Cryo Interactive didn't support the system, so it was only released on the PlayStation, PC, and Game Boy Color. But it's strange that they were able to use the Test Drive trademark, but Infogrames Europe wasn't able to, despite being held by the same company. That is so weird indeed. And it's once again another Pitbull Syndicate developed title. So, here's the front cover. With another Dodge Viper, I think it is, on the front. I don't really know my cars that much. And there's also a Cryo Interactive registration card that some of their games had. And a very blue disc. Maybe a bit too blue. And hopefully it won't give me the blues. Now we're on to Test Drive Off-Road Wide Open. But in Europe it's just called Off-Road Wide Open. So it was originally released for the PlayStation 2 in 2001. And this this Xbox version came out in May of 2002. I think it was a launch title in North America. But in Europe it was not. So this was developed by Angel Studios, and the Xbox version has 2 additional courses, and I think some additional tracks as well. So this was technically the best version of the game. And it sort of has a feel of other Angel Studios developed titles like Midtown Madness 2, so I do approve of this title. And the title screen still has the game's original name on it, even though it doesn't have it on the packaging over here. Next up is Test Drive Overdrive, the Brotherhood of Speed, TD Overdrive as it's abbreviated as, because there still must have been trademark issues, so they had to rename it. So this was also done by Pitbull Syndicate and released for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox in July of 2002. And it was released in North America as just simply Test Drive. It was meant to be like a reboot of sorts, where it had a story mode that was online with the Fast and the Furious franchise. It featured the protagonist Dennis Black, who had to try and get different vehicles and whatnot, and take part in illegal street racing called Test Drives. It had really cheesy voice acting, which wasn't credited, and has 4 different worlds you can race in. But it's just set back by the fact it's another arcade racer, and the CPUs cheat like crazy. So there's the PS2 version. and then the Xbox version. They're both the same game. There's no difference. There was a PC version sold in North America that came out a few months later, but that wasn't released in Europe. Here's the disc and the manual. Nothing much else to say about it. So after that, Pitbull Syndicate was sold off to another company, Midway Games, and they stopped working with Infogrames and Atari after that. Infogrames became Atari, and in 2004, Monster Games developed a spin-off of the franchise called Test Drive Eve of Destruction for the PS2 and Xbox, and in Europe it was released as simply Driven to Destruction, so there still must have been some copyright issues surrounding the Test Drive trademark, so yeah. And this game, it's a bit like a Destruction Derby kind of thing, or a Flat Out kind of thing, even though the Flat Out franchise debuted either a few months prior or a year later. I don't know when. So in this game, you're destroying vehicles and whatnot. It's the kind of game that I would enjoy the most of. Here's the manual. It'll be in the back of the case. And then the other thing inside is just an Atari registration card. And that location is Bandai Namco UK these days. So after that, in 2006, Eden Games, a self-owned division of Infogrames itself, it wasn't owned by any of the Atari divisions, went on to develop for Atari a complete reboot in the Test Drive franchise. One that debuted complete open worlds and massively multiplayer online racing, Test Drive Unlimited. Now, this is a great racing game. I do enjoy playing it. I haven't played the 360 version as much as the PC version, because I've had the PC version for longer. But it's still a good game regardless. This came out in September of 2006. So, yeah, it is promoted as a massively multiplayer online racer. Or massively open online racing is what it says on top of there. But, regardless, you can still play offline. There's CPU drivers around as well that act like online drivers. So, yeah. Here's the manual. And it's a big manual, this. So, what you get inside is you get the roadmap of Oahu in Hawaii, which is the location of where the game takes place. Atari product registration card as before, and the game's manual. So yeah, quite a lot of things included in this little package. And in March of 2007 came the PC version of the game, also from Eden Games. It's pretty much the same game. There isn't anything different about it. Here's the disc. And the manual. There we are. And then there was also a PlayStation 2 port, which was done by Atari Melbourne House instead of Eden Games. It's a slightly different title. There are major differences because of the limitations of the PlayStation 2. And even further limitations on the PlayStation Portable port of the game. And that's, some of the races are not included. There's, I think, less cars. The map's a bit smaller. And you can't choose what your character looks like. And there we are. The only, addition I remember from this is an auto, GPS mode where it navigates you to the nearest available race. And I think things like motorbikes and whatnot aren't included in this version either. But there are some cars that were available exclusively online in the 360 PC version that are available normally in that and the PSP version. So, yeah, there is a little bit of a difference. Here is Test Drive Unlimited 2, released in 2011. Once again, developed by Eden Games and published by Atari. And this is, a varied kind of game. So, with this one, they included Ibiza, alongside Oahu, which you have to unlock by completing in different races. But then they have mandatory driving schools, and they are horrible. They are really horrible. This is why I've not played the sequel as much as the original, because most of these races require you to complete in the driving schools, and the controls for the cars just don't work. It's very hard to complete the objectives in it, and it's very annoying. So, yeah, it's not as good as the original, but it's still a pretty game regardless, even with some graphics that haven't really aged well. And it even has a casino where you can gamble away Atari tokens, or whatever they call the premium currency in the game. And then they exploited that in the most recent game, Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, which makes it even more of a double insult, because Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown is an online-only game that doesn't have any offline functionality whatsoever. And that actually turned me off ever playing that game. Mainly because the publisher, I've forgotten the name of, who ended up acquiring the franchise from Atari, is very greedy. Here's the disc. It's very faded. That's how I got the game years ago. Here's the manual. And then the thing inside is that it has a Bandai Namco Partners customer service support thingy. So that's because this was right after Atari Europe was sold to Namco Bandai Partners. Well, Namco Bandai Games, and became Namco Bandai Partners. So, yeah, a bit different there. And then last but not least is Test Drive Ferrari Racing Legends, a spin-off in the franchise that goes back to the game's original roots. But this time it just has Ferrari vehicles in it. It was made to celebrate Ferrari's anniversary that year. It was developed by the company Slightly Mad Studios, who did the Need for Speed Shift games, and published by a company called Romebax Games. So this was a collaboration between Romebax, Slightly Mad, Atari, and Big Ben Interactive, the company who distributed this game. Yeah, Nacon, as they're known now. Oh yeah, Nacon is the company that owns the Test Drive franchise these days. This is actually a French copy of the game. The game, or Dutch as well, because this game did not have an actual... Yeah, this game did not have an actual physical release in the UK. I think it was a download-only title there, over here. But I'm not sure if the PS3 version was the same either. So, yeah, here is the disc, and here's the manual. It's very clean, actually. Quite nice, really. So, the inside of the manual doesn't really have much to say. There's no English in this manual at all. But at least the gameplay's in English, so that matters most. And then that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And then in day 11, what could I bring out next? I have no idea. It'll always be a surprise with the Mediavent calendar. So, see you guys next time. Bye-bye.